Hello and welcome to the Innovation Showcase Theater. My name's Toby and I have the pleasure of being your host today. Now we all know that to thrive in the new world of digital business, companies have to innovate at an unprecedented rate. So we're bringing you 11 sessions here at the Innovation Showcase where you will learn the latest solutions, service innovations, and best practices which we know will inspire and engage you here at Cisco Live 2019. Well, if you haven't noticed, Cisco Live Barcelona has sort of been taken over by the data center business unit. And fresh off the keynote stage, I'm happy to welcome Roland Acra, SVP and GM of the Data Center Business Group. But before he comes on stage, we hope you enjoy this video.
Here's a question. In a world where data goes everywhere, where does that put your data center? At the moment, trends are born, greeting customers with every detail they need, at the point where all your clouds meet and share, but also on watch, securing everything and everyone. In an uncentered world, you need a data center that extends to every branch, every device, every cloud, everywhere. The Cisco Data Center goes everywhere your data is. Between data everywhere and exactly where you need it, there's a bridge. Cisco, the bridge to possible.
How do you like my new best friend? She's our data anywhere best friend. Thank you all for being here. I want to ask just a very quick question to get going. How many of you have actually followed the keynote, in case I refer back to it? A good majority. Okay, great. So we're going to have an opportunity to expand a little bit on what I did in short 5-minute increments in the keynote. But more importantly, we're going to have the pleasure of also having customers join me on stage and share their own experience and how the technology actually helped them in their own context. The agenda we're going to follow is roughly this one. Recap the data center without boundaries and what we mean by that and why this is important. I'll talk a little bit about the intent-based data center and really give it substance and meaning and have you convinced that this is not just marketing speak when we talk about intent-based. We'll go into a couple of customer interviews. Then I'll talk about what's new with the computing environment and the hyperconverged environment of the data center. And then we'll have one more customer to actually make that very vivid for us on stage. Then we'll wrap up. I'll give you a shout out for a couple of additional innovation showcase sessions which are within the data center theme. And then from there, I think you get to enjoy lunch. Starting off with a basic premise, right? We would have no data center. We would have no cloud if it wasn't for applications and for the data, right? We don't do data centers for Wi-Fi access points or for things like that. It's all about the application and the data. And so it is really increasingly important that what we used to think of as the data center is following the application and the data wherever they go. Why? Most of you, regardless of your industry, have transformed from consuming software, consuming applications, productivity applications, workgroup applications, databases, and so on, to becoming software development entities yourself, to compete in your own business. If you're in financial services, if you're in retail, if you're in manufacturing, your own software that your developers write is now the way that you compete in your digital environment. And so it's very important for us to put that capability at the center of everything we do and want to make it possible everywhere it wants to go, right? The second piece is what I talked about during the keynote, which is this idea that the walls of the data center are almost irrelevant, okay? Largely because data is growing wherever it's convenient and useful for the business for the data to grow, okay? And also because our developers want to take advantage of whatever makes them the most productive, agile, fast, and get to the business outcome as soon as they want. Again, because now you're in the mode of producing software, not only of consuming software. So the whole business now is really gated by how well your software does, because it's your interface to your customers and your partners. So that is why, as you guys saw during the keynote, we've come up with that framework in which we say we need to take the data center wherever the data goes and wherever the application goes. And you see the variety of use cases that drive that, anything from developer wanting to take advantage of rapid tooling, or the data never wanting to be in the data center in the first place because it's only relevant in a store, and it has a shelf life of when a consumer happens to be in the store. That's when you want to have the action and capture the consumer for some business outcome. Those are all very concrete use cases for which this multiple driver of the data center expanding beyond its traditional four walls. Now, excuse me, I clicked too fast. We captured that during the keynote with those two main legs of the announcement today. One is ACI Anywhere, and the new frontier for ACI you saw was actually the public cloud. Two leading public clouds today, more to come in the future, both Amazon and Azure. For HyperFlex, different destination, scaling out to hundreds of remote endpoints in the enterprise, but still outside of the traditional data center, right? Because that's where the data is, that's where virtualized or software-defined storage wants to be, because that's where the applications that act on that data needs to act in the moment and on location, wherever that data is and wherever its business benefit is going to be. And I want to really hammer home that point of our commitment to what we call multi-cloud for everything that we do, right? And in a public cloud setting, it's obvious what that means. It's multi-cloud. That means show me that I'm not locked into any one cloud vendor, and I can take it conveniently wherever the tools are better, or the price is better, or there's a local data in-country governance that says that cloud guy, if he's in my country, I'm going to use their capability. But there is an equivalent meaning to multi-cloud on-premise, right? It is the openness of everything we do, whether we talk about network fabrics, whether we talk about storage and hyperconvergence, to saying yes if it's a VMware environment, but saying yes if it's an OpenStack environment, saying yes if it's a Hyper-V environment. Same thing for OpenShift, same thing for Kubernetes, same thing for any framework. Because the reality is, at any point in time, you will have applications on several of these. The bare metal applications don't seem to be going away anytime soon. Mainframes are here, Oracle/Sun servers are here, and there's a number of applications that are perfectly happy being on there, don't need to be rewritten, and aren't going to go anywhere. Anything that was done over the last decade or so probably was done in a virtualized environment as a VM on one or more hypervisors. Anything that's being done in the last 10 days or so is probably getting done in a microservices approach on one of the favorite container environments. And again, being integrated and making it possible to do all of them at once within one or more environments is super critical. And of course, we would think exactly the same thing of the APIs of the public clouds, where we want people to be able to take advantage of more than one at a time. So that's really a very fundamental piece that gives, I hope, meaning and light to what we mean by multi-cloud enablement, private as well as public. Now, three elements are going to be a recurring theme in what we talk about. The first one is automation. Again, why is automation important? You are being asked to do more with the resources that you have. And why more? More is because, again, the job of making third-party software available to your users will always be there. The databases have to work. The financial systems have to work. The Office or other productivity tools have to work. The more is you have a new warrior class in your company whose job is to make your company competitive in a digital world, and we together cannot stand in their way or slow them down. We need to let them go as fast as they want, because that's the competitiveness of your company that's at stake. Without automation, I don't know how we get there, right? We don't have more budget raining on us, and that's really a critical component of letting you do more with the headcount that you have today. Multi-cloud, I hope I've driven that point home in every aspect of it. And then security. Security is a long, long subject. I'm not going to do it justice here. I'm just going to call out one aspect of security, which is very fundamental to today's applications, okay? What is special about today's applications? One thing that's special is many of them drive their value from acting on data. Consumer data, operational data, infrastructure data. Whoever has data has responsibility today. You can no longer be casual about data, right? We will be front page news if we don't treat data with respect and with the obligations that regulators and good stewardship of the data would require us to do. Which means that those applications today that are multi-tiered application, what we think of as an application, you guys know, is no longer, one piece of code sitting on one CPU behind one port. It's a multi-headed hydra of, a bunch of web servers, a bunch of database nodes, a bunch of things in the middle, and together that collection is the application. And we need to take the framework that says, can I make sure that the database is only accessible because of it may have consumer data by whoever needs to access it, no more, no less. And make that possible when that database is moving around, because there's something called vMotion or something else that decides at 10 o'clock in the morning it's good to put it on this server, but at 2 o'clock in the afternoon I'm going to move it and put it on another server for good reason. That's for cost optimization or for capacity planning. We want to make all of that possible. The mobility of the workload, the mobility of the data within the data center or across into clouds and the enterprise branch. Those are why, in a data center context, these words have a very strong meaning and a very concrete, vivid, I hope, context that I want to give. Let's talk about intent-based data center and, again, the substance that's behind it, okay? We talked about how without automation we're not going to get there. The first step of being able to automate something is to be able to formally declare what it is that we're trying to do. Like if there's no journey that has a destination that says, get me here, I don't know how to do it manually or automatically. So there's something fundamental about intent-based networking, which is forcing the clarity of the contract that an application requires of the infrastructure. It could be a connectivity contract. It could be a security contract. It could be a performance, quality of service contract, no more than 10 milliseconds, never drop my packets. Any of those, when we give users the ability to formalize and declare, this is what I need you to do for me, we open the door to many things. But the most important thing we open the door to is assurance. Because now you can measure, since we stated the contract, you can say, is there a gap between what the infrastructure has actually done based on the telemetry and on the state of the infrastructure versus what we promised we would do. Whereas when it was a fuzzy, mushy, let's just put a bunch of commands and a bunch of servers and a bunch of networks, you were guessing what the outcome was actually, what it was, right? I don't know what this guy was thinking at 2 o'clock in the morning when he or she just changed the configuration on one system. Whereas here you have one source of truth and one place to measure up to. It's a very subtle but important point about why declaring the intent and making it explicit is actually a good thing. Now, in our view, we have that virtuous trilogy between formulating the intent, executing the intent, and then assuring against the intent. And I'm going to put just a very quick product personality against that trilogy and talk very briefly about 3 products here that participate in that intent-based data center in the infrastructure. The first one I'm going to talk about is ACI, right? ACI, we've heard it this morning, is about automation, is about bringing policy as part of the connectivity, meaning selective connectivity, that follows the workload, which is the object of the connectivity, anywhere it goes. It should not be linked to location. It should not be linked to where it lives. It should be linked to who it is and what it is. Okay? And then the job of the fabric is to make it true. And we're excited to have taken this ACI capability everywhere, including now into the cloud, the crowning of a lot of decoupling of ACI from being in one place to multiple places, to not being dependent on the hardware, to becoming completely now a virtual entity over a public cloud. Now, we often hear that in a world where there's a lot of sensitive data, and we want to be very selective about saying who gets to access the data, we come into something called a whitelist policy model, which is very counterintuitive to anybody who's done networking growing up with IP. IP was all about anybody talks to anybody except a few exceptions, which we used to call access lists. Well, in a world where you want to do something which is very regulatorily compliant, you want to say, only what I explicitly authorize should go, everything else is in no. That's real security, because you may not know where you're going to be living. You could be in a cloud, you could be in a noisy place, or in a dangerous place. That's called the whitelisting model, which says explicitly, we should be saying, this is a database with consumer data, who can access it, on which port, in which direction, and so forth. And same thing for every other piece. Well, this is a very difficult problem. If each application, one application, may have 10 or 15 or 50 components, databases, web servers, load balancers, other things, and I've got a couple of hundred applications, which is not that crazy, even for a medium-sized environment, you can see the combinatorial explosion of how many thousands of whitelist things you need to do. And we decided to leverage the power of data, which our network is capable of generating on the fly, to inform what the graph of connectivity is. So let's learn it. Instead of you having to run around and interview developers, we learn. Peter calls Paul on port XYZ. Mary calls Jane on this and that. We build the picture of what's normal, and that hopefully helps you get 95% of the way to what your policy needs to be. And then if we got it 2% wrong, you're already way, way ahead. That's really the power of learning behaviorally what an application does, how it behaves when everything seems normal, and then building the very tight policies to only allow what looks normal, and then everything else be denied by default. That's really a much stronger security posture than let's let everybody talk to everybody and then hope we catch all the exceptions. And then I talked about assurance. The benefit, again, of assurance is compliance and proof point. You don't believe where you declared the intent to tell you whether assurance is actually happening. You go to the network itself, you scoop up state, and you say, the contract said X, Y, Z. I gathered all the state. Does the addition of all the state deliver on what the contract said? Or is there a gap? And to give you those capabilities are a tremendous amount of help, particularly in regulated environments where you have to show compliance for the whole year that you get audited for. Okay? Very important piece that we're very excited about. Now, a lot of what we do these days is software-based, right? Software-defined everything. We're super excited about software benefit. Why? Because it gives you flexibility, it gives you choice, and software goes to the cloud when the workload goes to the cloud. However, in order to do good policy, in order to do the visibility and the telemetry, which I mentioned, that informs tools like Tetration, in order to do QoS contracts and service level agreements on performance, if the hardware is not capable of delivering this at wire speed, we're not delivering on the contract. And so we're very committed also to taking in the hardware picture forward. When we go to new speeds, we go to new speeds with features enabled. We don't do the compromise, do you want the features or do you want the performance? That's a devil's bargain. So really very important to do it right when we take things to the next level of performance and speed. And then I want to encourage you to go out and look at some new great insights, and either on the performance level or on the availability level, that the telemetry that we gather from the systems make possible. There are booths here where you can take a very, very compelling and vivid look at those, and I invite you to go take a look at these insight applications, either with ACI or with NXOS and DCNM. They equally will work for both environments. Very strong new capabilities. Now, with this, what I'm going to do is invite Pierre Hérault, who's the head of platforms at Cdiscount, to join me on stage. Pierre, welcome on stage.
Hi, Roland.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Pierre, tell us a little bit about Cdiscount and the business that you're in.
Okay.
So Cdiscount is a leader in e-commerce in France, and as such, we are the second largest e-commerce company in Europe. If I can give you some figures, we have 50 million products inside our catalog. We have approximately 1 million visitors, unique visitors per day, a typical day. And during the last Black Friday, we had 150 orders per second and 10 million visitors in one day.
So you're in the business of competing with Amazon in your local geography, not a game for the amateurs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's true. You know, every day we have to compete against these big giants, and we have to be very efficient the way we are deploying things. So last year and the year before, we deployed a new network inside one of our data center. We replaced 3 old networks with one new network based on Cisco ACI. And last year we changed, we migrate one data center to a new data center with Cisco ACI.
And what have been some of the changes you've seen in going from a non-ACI traditional model to an ACI model? What changes has that made for you?
With ACI, we have a lot of possibilities, new possibilities. You know, with the new technologies which are coming inside the data centers, like containers, VMs, you have to be more efficient when you deploy things, and your developers want you to be more efficient to deploy things. So with ACI, we are able to upgrade all our networks from one point with the controller, and we can apply profiles to every port of our network from one place.
So diversity of hypervisors or containers, consistency of upgrades. ACI, we've done a lot of integrations with third-party systems, either security or application delivery. Any of those have been useful in your context?
Yeah, true. We have, as I said, we have containers, so we are going to interconnect ACI with Kubernetes, but we have already interconnected Cisco ACI with Checkpoint to be able to take the objects inside ACI, inside the rules we have in the firewalls. We are going very soon to interconnect it with VMware, and we continue the integrations. For example, we are using Terraform and Ansible to automatize things on our networks. And last week, we created a script to synchronize objects from ACI and other applications inside our software, inside our IT.
Great, great. So you're doing it like a pro, which I guess in the online retail space, it's your only choice is to be on top of the latest tools. Any wow moments, any unexpected benefits or things that you'd like to share that struck you?
As I said, the biggest wow effect, if it's one, is that we can upgrade all the network from one point and from the controller, and it's a very interesting thing. And for the security guys, it's very important to have policies apply to every port of the network to ensure that the servers can access only to the things that they should have.
Selective access. And one last question, Pierre. The cloud enablement now, ACI into the cloud, does that have a use case for you?
We are going to look at it. We are a consumer of Microsoft Azure.
Azure?
So, we are going, if we can interconnect our on-premise Cisco ACI with Azure in the next months.
Okay, great. Please join me in thanking Pierre. He took time and openness. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I would like to invite Adrian Comley from British Telecom. So, I'm going to ask Adrian to introduce himself, but we're going to hear a different perspective from an integrator and partner who helps us take the technology to enterprise customers and make it actually integrated into their business. But let me ask you to introduce yourself and where in BT you fit, Adrian.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. My name's Adrian Comley. I'm a product manager for BT Global Services, and I look after the software-defined networking portfolio. So one of the things I do is to work with Cisco, take their ACI product into BT, put a managed wrap around that we then sell to our end customers.
Now, BT is well known as a managed services organization, always have been very strong with that. How is ACI helping you achieve your managed services capabilities?
So for our customers, they tend to have key use cases that we would deploy ACI. So for example, they're looking to move to the cloud, but they can't move completely. And that could be because of security issues or regulation that stops them moving all of their workloads. Or they've got bespoke applications that need to be run in a private data center, that special environment that won't quite work in a cloud environment just yet. Any results you could share with us that your customers are seeing from the new approach? So let me just give you a few examples of where we've deployed this. The first example would be the fact that from ACI, we can get an API. So we can pull out loads of data, and we can give that to our customers in terms of customized reports. So one of the basic things we can do is provide a report on auditing the environment. So let's look at what the physical inventory, the virtual inventory is out there, and give that to customers in a specific report. Another example would be our security center, so our SOC. We'll be able to analyze the entire fabric, and if they find an anomaly, like a virus, then they can isolate that VM from the rest of the fabric at the press of a button. One other quick example, based on an actual case, is that we can look at anomalies across the fabric. So we were able to work with one of our customers and identify one of their end users who was downloading films illegally, and we were able to identify within 3 physical meters which devices were being used to do those downloads.
Okay, so great security. How about the data center goes anywhere the data goes? Does that align with a set of scenarios that BT is actually interested in?
Absolutely. So I think what's particularly exciting for me about the announcements we've heard this morning is that our customers want to be able to have a mixture of the public and private data centers in their estate. So absolutely, this aligns perfectly with where we're going and where our customers are going.
And so once your customer gets deployed and are in operation and have optimized things around current capabilities, where do you see the next set of challenges? Where do they go next? What can we do to help you go there?
Okay, so I think that the next thing is really looking cross-domain. So if we look at the LAN environment, we look at the WAN environment and the data center environment, it's better to join those up, both in terms of kind of a software-defined products, but also sitting above that, it's the reporting capability, the analytics that then provides the information to be able to manage that. So again, one of the things that was announced today was about AppD, being able to provide customers with a holistic view across these environments. So I'm particularly excited by that kind of development.
Yes, the connections between App Dynamics and the infrastructure. Any last wow factor that you didn't expect? I guess
from a deployment that we did for a global retailer, multi-site deployment, multi-pod, we deployed all of the physical kit, and then Charlie Greenaway, who's our expert in BT, was able to deploy the configurations right across all those sites within a couple of seconds at the press of a button. So for me, that was deploying that so quickly was a real wow moment.
Adrian, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Please join me in thanking Adrian. Thank you. All right, let's move on to what we're doing equally importantly in compute and hyperconvergence. We have a ton of exciting things that I want to make sure I get across, as well as have a customer talk to it with a context that's a business clear one. So we've been on that journey of taking advantage of components, of nuggets of technology, and trying to make them simpler to consume, right? We see new forms of memory today in servers. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. We see new GPUs augmenting CPUs. We see all these bits of components. And our job is to say, can we actually make you adopt them by taking on the integration and the complexity and simplifying it? And the few ingredients we bring to this are things like infrastructure as code. We turn the resources of a server into programmable entities that you can decide how you allocate them between multiple applications or VMs or containers sharing the pooled infrastructure. We bring cloud delivered management as a key component of enabling that simplification of absorption of the technology. And then hyperconvergence itself is nothing if it's not a simplification and a speeding of deployment of applications. We go back a long time since the inception of UCS with having delivered a server as a model. Every piece of the server, whether it's the memory or the fan or the power supply or the network interface card, to let you carve them up and dynamically manage them as a function of the workloads that dynamically get deployed on these. I'm going to illustrate this with something new today that you're going to be increasingly hearing about. The Optane new hybrid memory from Intel. It's a wonderful technology that gives the best of what RAM, dynamic RAM can do and what flash can do. It brings the persistence of flash with the speed of access of memory and gives you that continuum. Well, that's wonderful. How does a developer take advantage of it? How do you allocate it? This thing can be configured as persistent memory, so it feels like flash and disk, or it could be configured like RAM, so you have very rapid access time to it, but with a lot of depth. We're taking the same constructs that we've done for CPUs and for other things in order to make a technology like this that's very powerful, but very hard to operationalize by a developer, and just making it a very easy thing that flows within how you orchestrate a server. Those are some of the very exciting things that we really get up at night for, because that's bringing a new nugget of technology and making it consumable by people who have a job to do and need to get it done within their workflow quickly and well. I want to talk about some IT initiatives within which I'm going to put in some new capabilities we're announcing here. Data center modernization is one that we've been on. Application modernization, container-based microservices and so forth. Data-intensive solutions. We see more and more of these for obvious reasons. The multi-cloud, both in its private and public definitions that I've been talking about. And last but not least, the use cases where from big data we're going to not only training complex models, but inferences on that data. And the good news is we have a ton of exciting things that I want you to be visiting throughout the show floor. Anything from, on the top right, we have a new converged infrastructure with our friends at NetApp that has GPUs embedded. So now you could do a converged infrastructure stack optimized for machine learning workloads. Very exciting, new, first to the world kind of combined capability. At the bottom, we're continuing to integrate with every form of object storage as well as secondary software-defined storage. New announcements that you can go see with Cohesity as well as with CloudGen. One for object storage, one for, well, I said them backward. One for software-defined secondary storage and one for object-defined storage. New cases and new servers that you can take a look at with GPU optimized for machine learning capabilities and increasingly combining with the software stack developers for machine learning to give you a running start in the long tradition of solutions that we've been bringing to you, where we pre-configure, pre-integrate, and pre-test workloads like databases, workloads like big data systems, and now new workloads like machine learning libraries and environments. So very, very excited about many of these. I said multi-cloud. OpenShift is the latest thing that we've now integrated with HyperFlex as yet another way applications can get deployed, and we provide the software-defined storage for it. So very excited about these things. I want to wrap with one, the most exciting of all for me. We talked about Intersight many times. We talked about the benefit of cloud-delivered management. Cloud-delivered management is very nice to configure things. cloud-delivered management is critical for diagnosing and debugging things. This is the stuff we don't talk about enough. People talk about automation. I guarantee you 90% of the time they mean automating configuration. Very nice. We need it. Orchestration, all of that is super important because you get repeatability, you get consistency. What do you do at 2 o'clock in the morning when there's a problem? That's where you go, I am glad that there's a cloud service that is harvesting the telemetry from the systems on an ongoing basis, not when there's a crisis, on an ongoing basis, so that we can preventively say, we know the feature you're using on the version that you're using has a known bug. Somebody else ran into it. Why would you let you run into it instead of telling you proactively, that's a well-known bug, here's a better image for the feature that you're using, right? Availability is the name of the game for anybody who's in the business of infrastructure, right? Don't tell me anything else if you're not available first, up and running. And so anything that can help prevent outages, which take away availability, or shorten the window of diagnostics and pinpoint root cause, all of those things to me, as somebody who knows what it's like to run networks, not only to configure them and walk away, those are tremendous use cases of where the cloud makes a huge difference in making the next customer get the benefit of what we learned from the previous customer through that common cloud system. So we talked about HyperFlex Edge anywhere. I've talked about all these capabilities, very excited about those. Go out and look at them during the technology demonstrations. I'm going to wrap up with a couple of things. One is an exciting new piece of news. When you are in the business of software, which we increasingly are, and I've lined up here the leading software capabilities that are in a data center context. Anything from Tetration, App Dynamics, Cloud Center, HyperFlex. We're wrapping those into what we call an enterprise agreement framework. This is really an ease of consumption and of delivery. So if a customer goes in and buys more than one of these, number one, the purchasing steps are streamlined and integrated, and then the more of them they consume, the better of a deal they will get in an enterprise-wide setting. So that's really a very exciting new business, ease of doing business, in addition to the technology pieces that we talked about. I hope you guys will find those very useful. And again, you see the breadth of products and capabilities that are included in that enterprise agreement. And you know, at Cisco, we've done enterprise agreements of this kind in other contexts, like security and software-defined wide area network and so on. And the benefit of this is not only does this EA give the convenience and the economic benefit within the data center, but it actually can be joined with other enterprise agreements. So somebody who's bought 2 or 3 components in the security suite and 1 or 2 here can see the benefit of joint enterprise agreements. So there's a real concern here for you finding it easier to consume software at a very large scale. Excuse me. Last but not least, I want to do a shout out for 2 more innovation sessions that will be right here, relevant to data center topics. One will be the private cloud, multi-cloud session. You will hear more about HyperFlex Anywhere. You will hear much more about Cloud Center and all the other things we're doing, and that will be on Wednesday. And then there will be a very data-centric session that will be taking place in 2 days. You'll hear more about App Dynamics. You'll hear more about Tetration. You'll hear how we scoop up data and act on it for very concrete benefits. When we talk about, you know, data and machine learning and so on, we always ground it to an outcome. What are we trying to achieve? Is it security? Is it protection? Is it application performance? And you're going to hear about some exciting integrations which are recent across many of these products. So those are 2 sessions. For those of you data center jocks, I really encourage you to go do. And of course, meet the engineers at the demo booths, get intimate with things, ask all your questions. That's in the end what Cisco Live is for, learning from one another between us and yourselves, but also between you and your peers. So thank you. Thank you so much for listening to me twice today. I look forward to seeing you around the show during the rest of the 2-3 days of the show. And bon appétit for lunch. Thank you.